Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cinema Wave podcast here at the Culture Wave Media Network. And today, even though we're in January, we are finally wrapping up our 10 favorite films of 2024. We're also going to include our honorable mentions and some movies that we did not have a chance to check out, unfortunately, as the time of this recording, but hopefully we'll catch up by the time the Oscars roll around. I am one of your hosts for this episode. My name is Darian Scalamoni. I am joined with Liz Seiko.
Hello.
And also Vinny Albano.
Hello, hello.
All right, so we're going to start with Liz.
Nice.
She's going to give her honorable mentions. Then you give the movies you're just a little ashamed you haven't got around to yet. And then you give your top 10, and then we'll bounce around, and then we'll have roundabout discussions about all the things that we want to talk about. So, Liz,
Perfect.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, so starting with my honorary films that didn't make my top 10s, but still loved them. We Live in Time, Booger, Conclave, Baby Girl, Fall Guy, and A Complete Unknown.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then the films that I unfortunately have not gotten a chance to see yet, but I'm hoping that I can kind of bang them all out maybe in the next month, are Sing Sing, The Brutalist, A Different Man, Nickel Boys, September 5th, The Last Showgirl, A Real Pain, and All We Imagine as Light. And now my top 10 favorite films. So one thing about my top 10 favorite films is I went more with things that I just loved and will probably rewatch versus things that I think are like technically perfect films.
Is that how you picked your list last year as well?
No, I think I went more with like what I think would win.
So you're changing it up for 2024.
Yeah, you know,
All
new
right.
list. So here we go. Are you going to go 1 through 10 or
10 through 1?
10 through 1. Okay, so in number 10 spot, I have Night Bitch. Number 9, Civil War. Number 8, Dune. 7, The Challengers. 6, Anora. 5, The Substance. 4, Blink Twice. 3, Nosferatu. 2, Wicked. And number 1, His Three Daughters.
Okay. That is Liz's top 10 list. Vinny, we go to you, starting with your honorable mentions. Just missed your top 10 for the year 2024.
Yes.
Yes. So right off the bat, right before we started recording, this film I thought came out 2 years ago from now, but turns out it was distributed in 2024, but had a festival run in 2022. Hundreds of Beavers. If I didn't already have a curated top 10, this would be at number 5. I actually really love this movie. It's so goofy. It's so funny. But I already made my top 10, so it's locked in. I'm not changing it. So Hundreds of Beavers, Long Legs just missed my top 10. I thought that was like an incredible mystery. It's great. Dee Dee, Terrifier 3. You know what? Sonic 3.
Wow.
Just because, like, you know, I gotta put Sonic in there. And yeah, that's really it. Furiosa 2, but towards the bottom of my honorable mentions. And what I wanted to see, which I wanted to see a lot actually, His Three Daughters I missed, A Different Man, The Brutalist. I saw the TV Glow. I haven't seen that yet. Sing Sing, A Real Pain, A Real Pain with Jesse Eisenberg.
Yeah.
Vermilio, The Seed of a Sacred Fig, which I really want to see, and The People's Joker. And my top 10, starting from the bottom up, at number 10, A Complete Unknown. Number 9, Songs from the Hole. Number 8, Monkey Man. Number 7, The Substance. Number 6, Memoir of a Snail. Number 5, Nosferatu. Number 4, Challengers. Number 3, Look Back. Number 2, Anora. And number 1, Dune Part 2.
All right. Now, my honorable mentions.
Give them to us.
Just outside the top 10, I don't think either of you guys have seen this, but I got to see it at Montclair. Just missed my top 10 was The Order. Great movie. More people need to see it. Songs from the Hole in my honorable mentions. The Bike Riders. I've seen the movie 3 times now. Really, really good. Just missed my top 10. Strange Darling, Conclave, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and Guacamole Yesterdays, and My Old Ass. Those would probably be my honorable mentions for 2024. Bunch of things I also didn't get a chance to see yet. Unfortunately, looking forward to seeing them before the Academy Awards, but The Brutalist, The Substance, Civil War, Sing Sing, September 5th, A Real Pain, Heretic, Nickel Boys, DD, Furiosa, and his three daughters. Those are the big ones that I still need to see at some point before the Oscars turn around. And it is time for my top 10. My list is as follows. Number 10, A Different Man. Number 9, Deadpool and Wolverine. Number 8, We Live in Time. Number 7, Small Things Like These. Number 6, A Complete Unknown. Number 5, Challengers. Number 4, Wicked. Number 3, the Superman documentary, the Christopher Reeve story. Number 2, Dune Part 2. And number 1 is Anora. Lots to talk about. Lots of movies on these lists. Some of them are the same. Some of them are different. But let's start with the one that is... Let's start with the two that are very synonymous with all three of our lists. Both of them cracked the top 6, I believe. You had Anora number 6.
Yeah.
All right. So Anora, Dune Part 2. This was similar to last year. I don't think Vinny was on the best movies list last year. You were best TV shows, but all of us had like Iron Claw was in our top 5, I believe, last year.
I think so.
I'm trying to think what else was last year that were like higher up on our lists. There was a number of movies. And I will preface this by saying, and we can do this quickly, but I think this was a weaker year for movies compared to last year. I do think that there was a little bit more depth in the middle. I think there were some bolder ideas for some of the movies, but some of them didn't hit me as hard this year. And I think part of that could have been because of the strikes. Part of that could have been because of a number of different things, that production's getting shut down, all these things. And even some bigger movies that you thought maybe could have been bigger and better, like Francis Ford Coppola had a movie come out this year. Obviously, people didn't love it. Joker Folie à Deux was a huge follow-up to a movie that had 11 Academy Award nominations. Some of these movies didn't hit the way that I think we thought they were going to in the beginning of the year. But Anora, Dune Part 2. Let's start with Dune, because the three of us talked about that months ago, back in March when the movie came out. Have either of you revisited? I haven't had a chance to revisit it yet. I can't wait to. But why is it so high on your guys' lists as we recap 2024?
I think it's so high on my list because I was really blown away with the first Dune. And just for them to be able to outdo the first one for me really was a huge accomplishment for such a big story. Because often part 2s sometimes fall apart. They try to recreate too much of what they created in that first film, and they're like chasing that high. But I feel like just from the acting to directing to set design to costumes, everybody kind of made it into its own film rather than copying the first film. And they outdid themselves. Like it stuck with me. I think I did rewatch it recently. I think I watched the first one and the second one weekend. Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, I come from a very similar boat. I really loved the first one when it first came out, and this just blew me away. When I was curating my top 10 list, I knew it was going to be in the top 3, but it placed its spot as my favorite of the year because when it first came, I got that fan screening, early screening about like 5 days before the official release date, and I was so blown away that I knew I needed to see it in 70 millimeter as soon as possible. And this was so last minute. I ended up getting a screening in Pennsylvania at 9 a.m. for a 70 millimeter IMAX screening. And luckily there was like one seat available that wasn't the front row. So like the fact that a film had me so giddy, so like blown away to the point where I would do that, and then also revisit it later. I've probably rewatched the Fade Rotha Getty Prime scene, 10 times now on YouTube, where just the gladiator pit it's epic. I haven't seen a film that meets that level of epicness nearly ever, honestly. Yeah. Like it is among probably some of the most epic films I've ever seen, and I loved it. I was so blown away.
Yeah, I mean the fact that the movie came out in March and we're almost a year removed from it and it's still one that's being talked about. I'm like upset that it's not getting as much attention at the award ceremonies thus far because I think it's such a technical marvel and it is so epic, but the acting also does such a great job of keeping up with all the grandioseness of it, whether it's the set design or the costume design or any of those technical aspects of the movie. I can't wait to watch it again. I also saw it 70 millimeter in IMAX, and it was one of the best movie going experiences of my life. It's just like Denis is one of those directors that he's just able to encapsulate movie making at the grandest scale. There's only a few directors to me that can do that, and he's doing it constantly with every movie. It doesn't matter, and it's one that has stuck with me since I've seen it. So I always knew I did switch. I shuffled so many times back and forth between Dune Part 2 and Anora since seeing both of them. I've only seen both of them once. It's just something about Anora 2. Something about Anora that movie has stuck with me since I've removed myself after the screening, where I return to specific moments of that movie. And that's how I feel like I can always justify why a movie is higher up on my list. Like I felt that way last year about like Maestro. Like there's still moments I will think back to of that movie where I'm like, oh, I remembered this moment and how that moment stuck with me for weeks at a time, for months at a time. And Anora was like that. But Dune, the first Dune was my number one movie of 2020. And the fact that Dune Part 2, 4 years later, is also in my top 2 it's huge. I mean, the franchise is unbelievable, and I'm excited to see what he does with Messiah. Anora, Liz, it is the lowest on your list, but obviously still in your top 10, which means you have to think it's at least a great movie if it's going to make your top 10. What were your thoughts? Because you haven't had a chance to talk about it on the channel. Vinny and I did a review. You guys can check that out on the YouTube channel with Zach, but I haven't gotten your take yet. So why is Anora on your list?
Well, I love Sean Baker already. I think that he's just an incredible filmmaker, and he is able to like encapsulate the people that are off the main like road a little bit in such a nuanced way and through a lens that allows people to just see them for who they are. And I think he just has a really great eye for humanity. Anora, I was very hyped about, and unfortunately, I just was not able to see it as soon as possible because, for anyone that doesn't know, I was getting married while this was like in theaters, essentially.
A married woman,
and so like I just missed the boat on it. But I loved it. I think that Mickey honestly is an incredible force in the film. She really took it by the reins as like the lead actor and just went for it in all ways, which if she didn't, I don't think it would be as resonating to people. I think she just really took Annie's character and made it her own, which it's hard to do if you haven't led a film like that. So I think she definitely deserves all the flowers. The reason it's not higher on my list is because all the films before it on my list, I think are pretty perfect and things that I wouldn't change. There are a few things that if Anora were my film, I would have changed it. I think I'm in the minority. I did not like the genre changes. I didn't really like how the tone was
the second
changing.
half of the movie, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
I think it lost its momentum when we got to the scene of like them being bombarding into the house.
Yeah.
I think it got very stalled and the story didn't keep moving until way later in the film, which is weird because I feel like Sean Baker is such a great writer that he focuses on how to keep the story going. So it was a little weird for me. And then I also think that I just heard of so much of the hype, and because I saw it later than the first wave of people, I had these like incredibly high expectations and was slightly a little bit let down. Which
I think that's fair.
Maybe I'd have a different point of view if I was one of the first people to see it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Some of the reasons you don't like it is why I do like it. I'm also one of those types of people as a moviegoer that I like when you can genre bend if it's done correctly. And the one thing, we talked about this in our review, but Sean Baker does such a great job of establishing real people on screen. Like people that you feel like you have literally either had an interaction with them in the past, even if it's somebody you have a brush up with, like you're like, oh, like that person was an asshole. Like, yeah, those people exist and they can be in movies too. And I think that so much of that, and Mikey Madison's performance this year is probably my favorite of the year. I'd have to think about it and sit with it for a little bit, but I think that she was so remarkable and really put herself on a different like platform doing this movie. I think that she's in a situation where she could do whatever she wants from this point forward. And Sean Baker, I also love as a filmmaker. I haven't seen all his movies, but Florida Project, the year that came out, it was in my top 3. And I love how he kind of just leaves his footprint in a way where it's, it's actually kind of like the opposite of a Denis, where it's like he can literally be so ground level that he could still make these bigger stories. Like this is like a modern day fairy tale on capitalism and immigration and all these different things. And I mean, Yura Borisov, his performance has as I've sat with it, has become more beautiful over time as well. So it's my number 1 of the year. It's your number 2, Vinny. And you talked about it at length, obviously, but if you want to just give your quick encapsulation.
I just echo everything that you guys said. Like, I mean, Mikey better win Best Actress. Like, she's so good. So good. It's insane. But I do agree with Darian here, where I actually preferred the genre bending. Because at that point, I remember me and Zach saw it at Montclair, and we're in the theater, and at that point I was like taken back. I'm like, oh, I like this change, because now it's like, now I have no idea where the movie's gonna go, and I like that. I like the fact that it almost feels like one continuous scene that just continues and continues, but it's still entertaining, it's still funny, it's still energetic, the performances are great, and you have no clue where it's gonna go. I want, as an audience, to almost be whipped around. I like that just
boomerang effect. Yeah, I totally get that. Another movie on our lists, not as high up as the 2 we just talked about, but was Challengers. And did you do that review with us, Vinny? You did, right? Or
no, I actually caught Challengers
after
a lot
we reviewed
later
it, right? Yeah. So Challengers ends up on all 3 of our lists. A Luca Guadagnino film, one of 2 that came out this year. Another one that didn't even make our list of like want to see was Queer, which I think was another one in that kind of, not in the same level of a Joker, Follow You Do, or Megalopolis, but one that there was a lot of hype behind, and now the hype is very much dissipated. And those movies kind of come throughout the year, especially awards type movies. There's always someone they're like, oh, that one's definitely going to be an awards baity movie, and it didn't really get the same attention as the Challengers. I can't stop thinking about Zendaya in this movie. I can't stop thinking about the score of this movie and the dynamic of the love triangle between her, Josh O'Connor, and Mike Feist. Another movie that came out in the first third of the year, which, guess what, guys? There could still be good movies in the first third of the year or quarter of the year. I love this movie. And this is one that I had told you before I submitted my list. I had it 6 and I jumped it into the top 5 last minute, because in our review I talked about there's a big shift that happens at the end of that movie that I am not a fan of, but I think that 85% of that movie is Chef's Kiss, is fantastic. So it ends up number 5 on my list. You had it where on yours?
I had it at 7.
Okay. Tell us why you love Challengers.
I mean, I was already a big fan of Luca's, but I think that this just showed that he can do even bigger and better and more than he's already done. Because like Luca, you could say he just kind of loves doing his like love triangles and like taboo relationships. And I think that this was him stepping into just a new like wave of film perfection. I also think it was a incredible change in Zendaya's filmography, and it was helping her go from kind of like teen roles and like younger roles into now stepping into fully formed adult roles in a perfect way, because she plays both ages, and she clearly is able to play both with incredible range.
Both Dune stars did that this year, by the way.
Yeah,
her and Timmy in A Complete Unknown.
And then, the score I'm still thinking about. I literally, sometimes it comes on when I'm just like driving, because I'll put like my music on shuffle, and then I'm like, hell yeah. I'm like, this is iconic, like music, artistry. And I think that just the shots are gorgeous of how they designed it, especially when they're on the tennis court. The reason it's not higher is because there was part at the ending that I was like, oof. It was almost so perfect, but the ending just dipped slightly for me.
What did you give this movie?
I want to say a 9.
That's what I gave it too. It could have been a 10.
It could have been a 10. There was just a slight, like, I don't know. It was just a small little detail that I was like, oh, if they had put a little bit more thought around it, I think it would have been perfect. But all just like the like sexual tension and the innuendos in it. It's a gorgeous film, and Luca, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah. I echo a lot of the same sentiments here, because it's a gorgeous film. It is. I'm so fascinated on how Luca is so versatile within all these. He has connecting points between all his films, but Bones and All is soaked within like horror and this grit, still a romance at heart. And in this, also kind of touching on topics of lust and love. That's the center of this film. But also very different setting, very different style to the filmmaking, yet nails it so well. But I feel like for this little tennis match, I love films that could take something so little, like this tennis match in upstate New York. You wouldn't think anything of it, right? It's no like Dune, like, oh my God, planets exploding, like type deal. But then they build the tension so well, and a credit to Luca here and the screenwriters, builds the tension so well and the scope of it to make this little love triangle feel like the world is about to like blow up.
Yeah.
Like, I love that, and I die for that. The tension in this film is like none other. The performances are like none other. I actually did like the ending. I thought it was very I don't have. I like when it can get a little weird and ambiguous, you know, and I liked the dynamic between these characters all throughout, and the ending, I believe, emphasized that even further. Like throughout the entire film, I'm looking at all the main characters and kind of looking at who's being the more rational one than the other one in this scenario, and how that's shaping the plot to be. I loved it. I loved almost nearly everything about it.
It's a great movie.
It's my number 4.
We all really loved it, obviously. Other ones that made 2 of our 3 lists that we can go over pretty quickly. Liz and Vinny both shared Nosferatu on their lists. Liz had it at 3. Vinny had it at 5. The Substance, Liz had at 5. Vinny had it at 7. And then Liz and I both had Wicked. I had Wicked at number 4. Liz had it at her number 2 spot. So let's start with The Substance, because I haven't had a chance to see it yet. You guys can gush about it. I'm very excited to see it. I don't know if it would have made my top 10, but it's one that I'm like really that and The Brutalist are probably my 2 most anticipated that I still haven't seen yet. So whoever, Vinny, you want to touch on The Substance?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, it's funny enough, off camera we were just talking, because I just came from a brunch. We were talking about The Substance there. The Substance is always coming up in conversation, and I think that is the reason why this film stands as top 10 of the year. It is memorable. The performances by Demi and Margaret here are incredible. Even like Dennis Quaid brings such a weird but so perfect. The whole film is basked within this super weird, almost whimsical satire while being so dark and disgusting. It reminded me of so many of these like incredible body horror films that I love, and these French and Italian satires and Cronenberg, and this, like, going in blind too. I knew nothing. I just knew you guys were like, hey, you want to cover this? It's with Margaret Qualley. It's a horror movie. I go, okay. But I sat down at 10 p.m. one night in the theater alone, and I was blown away. The experience, how going into that film blind was like none other. It really wasn't. Like the emotions, the amount of disgust, the thrill that my entire being went through the entire runtime it was incredible through and through.
Liz?
Vinny is speaking my language over here right now. It is it's also just one of those films that really opens like my mind up to being like, wow, somebody like fully came up with this concept one day and was just like, I need to make this into a film and people need to see this. And just by having all the perfect parts, it made it into such a memorable film. I think it's going to be a huge stamp on the award season too, because I mean, right now there is a huge argument of like horror and like body horror does not get awarded for some reason. The industry just really doesn't want to give it its flowers, and I think The Substance is going to smash that door in and really at least get some awards out of it, because the makeup alone, it's wild. Like when you see
I
it,
can't wait.
it's actually mind-blowing, just the art design and how they created the like body morph that they do in the film. It's something that I don't think has hit the mainstream media in a really long time, because body horror isn't necessarily something that a lot of people go toward. So I think the fact that it's just getting all the attention is huge. And I think it's because Demi Moore was like, hell yeah, this also has a higher conversation about like what people put their bodies through in order to feel beautiful, and that they don't necessarily care what drug they're taking as long as they feel beautiful on the outside. And I think that having her, such a well-known actress, attached to it, catapulted this into like existence. And it's just an awesome film.
Yeah,
it's wild.
It's great to give someone like Demi Moore a spotlight again too, and put her back on the map. I've heard amazing things about the movie. Before you guys jump into the Nosferatu train, I was not as much of a fan of that movie as other people are, but let's gush a little bit about a movie that you've already gushed so much about. Thank you everyone who's already checked out the Wicked review, but I have not had a chance to talk about this movie on the network.
Give us everything, DJ.
This movie changed my life. This movie, I saw it twice in theaters. I think it might have been the only movie I saw twice in theaters this year. It's just a cultural moment. It's a cultural touchstone. It's a cultural moment. It's one of those musicals that you are completely swept off your feet when you get to see it. Ariana Grande is phenomenal in this movie. I think she is the front runner for the Academy Award. I don't think she's going to win, but I think she should win. I think she's deserving of it. I just have a weird feeling they're going to give it to Zoe Saldana. But I'm really excited for the spotlight that this movie's getting. I am excited about the prospect of other musicals now being able to be made, because we've talked previously about how there was marketing being done to keep musicals away from people and audiences. And there's so much with this movie that I love. I mean, I think the production design is phenomenal. They filmed both movies back to back, which is unbelievable because the scale of just this movie is crazy. The only reason it's not higher on my list is the same argument that I make sometimes with other movies, where it's just like, and in the current nature of movie making, unfortunately, for bigger things, there is an end, but there's more to come. And I don't love that. I want a full encapsulated story in my storytelling. And that's the only reason it doesn't crack my top 3. But if I did the review, it would have been a 10 for me. Yeah. So it's one of those movies that I just absolutely adored. Jonathan Bailey is a new star that I absolutely adore. Cynthia is obviously fantastic in the movie. It just completely surprised me. Wicked was definitely my biggest surprise of the entire year.
I know, because you guys were like low-key hating on it.
I wasn't hating on it. I just thought that, and again, someone who has never seen the original stage show, it made me like appreciate Wizard of Oz again. Not that I never didn't like that movie, but it like brings that back into the zeitgeist. Like, I mean, excited for Wicked for Good next year. We might have a Dune Part 2 situation then too. We'll have to see. Obviously, you love the movie. It's your number 2 of the year, Liz. So
it almost made my number 1, but the film that's in my number 1 spot just has my heart a little bit more on the rewatch. But Wicked, oh God, we talked for like 2 hours on the episode, so I'm not gonna like talk too much about it. But I think that Wicked is such a testament of making films with teams that appreciate the source material already. We have seen so many musical films with talent that is just kind of thrown into it based on how many followers they have and like stuff like that. And they're not really cast based on their talent. This film was successful because they casted talented singers and talented performers, not just, okay, who's hot in the industry right now. And that matters. And all of them are huge Wicked fans. The entire cast and production team, they've loved the musical for years and years and years. And I think that that's why people are walking away so emotional from it. Because if you don't have a team that is behind their film with just utter love and adoration, how do you expect your audience to? So I love Wicked. I think it should deserve every award. I understand what you're saying about the ending, but it also just makes me giggle inside because I can't wait for you to see what's coming.
Yeah.
Like
I totally get it.
you got to buckle up and you got to be like,
I'm stoked.
it's going to be wild
I mean,
when
if
people that don't know the story finally see what actually comes to.
Yeah, well, I'll say this before we haven't recorded our most anticipated movies of 2025 list yet, but I do know that going into this year, like there was no shot Wicked would have been in my top 10.
Yeah,
it's cemented. It's gonna have to be in my top 10 for next year. So that's enough. I feel like of a turnaround. I'm excited, very excited for Wicked for good. Vinny, gush a little bit more about your number 5 movie, Nosferatu. Why don't you?
No sweet.
Yeah, I mean, we just did. This might be recency bias because of how high it is, but it is a really incredible film, like just through and through. Eggers just brings that gothic fairy tale to the source material and reinvents it in a way where it is still faithful to the source material, to the lovers of not only the novel, the Dracula novel, but the original 1922 silent film, but also just brings a nice, beautiful touch that I think could not be done without Eggers and without our modern advancements in filmmaking. It's just really beautiful through and throughout. Yeah.
Yes.
No, I agree. I mean, for me, it's technically the most perfect film of the year for me. I also think that it's bringing back that feeling of like nostalgic gothic romance, which I feel like there hasn't really been a film like that, and a good film at least, with that genre in a long time, or like forbidden love with somebody that's an outcast. Yeah, I love this film. I knew I was going to really enjoy it, but I actually was surprised by how much I enjoyed it because I thought I was going to be a little bored. But I was fully invested in the story. I really wanted to see how it ended, and I'm happy to say that this film, I wouldn't be having such a high score if the ending wasn't as satisfying, and they give a perfect ending to just a very stylized like romance.
Yeah. All right, quickly going through the rest of our top 10s. We're gonna go rapid fire with the rest of our list.
Let's do it.
One quick thought on all the movies on the rest of our list. I'll start. We'll go to you. We'll go to Vinny. A Different Man is a movie that is so unique in its take and has an unbelievable performance by Sebastian Stan. Highly recommend that for everyone. Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm a comic book nerd. You guys already all know this. It is such a fantastic tribute to comic book movies and to all that came before it with Fox. And Hugh and Ryan Reynolds honestly have the best chemistry of the entire year. So that's why it makes my list. We Live in Time. If there was one movie that I could take the time to talk about longer, it would be this movie. Probably 2 actors, both sexes, that are in my top 3 favorite actors currently. I think Florence and Andrew are unbelievable in this movie, and I just love a good connective romance movie. Small Things Like These I got a chance to see at Montclair, and Killian is as great as ever in this movie. A really small movie, a short runtime of 96 minutes. If you guys can check that out, if it's playing anywhere near you, you definitely should see it. A Complete Unknown, we just did the review for that, so I don't want to take too much time on that, but I think Timothée Chalamet has reached a different stratosphere in terms of performer for me. He is the modern day Leo, and I feel that with every single performance he has. Had the biggest year, in my opinion, of any actor of 2024 between that and Dune. And Superman, the Christopher Reeve story, because nobody else has seen this film. A movie that made me cry like an absolute baby in the theater because it's a pure encapsulation of not only the symbol that Superman is for so many people in their lives, but Christopher Reeve after becoming a paraplegic and what he did for that community and just giving people hope in life. It's a movie about hope at a time where we need a lot more of it. And it's a movie that just made me feel really warm inside while also just shedding a lot of tears about the amount of pain that that human being went through. It was a beautiful movie. Another one I highly recommend to everybody. So, Liz, other ones on your list?
All right. In my number one spot, His Three Daughters. I've seen this movie twice and I cried so hard both times. It's an incredible performance. It stars Elizabeth Olsen, Natasha Lyonne, and Carrie Coon as three sisters who are taking care of their father, who unfortunately is very sick and dying. This film just encapsulates grief so beautifully and in a humanistic way, because it's able to show the different levels of grief through the three different sisters. I just feel like if anybody's ever lost anybody or they've ever experienced some sort of grief on their own, you would resonate with at least one moment in this film. It's so beautiful. It's also not overdone. I feel like a lot of films about loss can be very melodramatic, and this is also has very funny moments that allows for that like air to come through. So it's my number one pick. I could rewatch it over and over again. It's beautiful. The next one that is just on my list is Blink Twice, which I know a lot of people, DJ specifically, is a little surprised of how high this is on my list, but I have no complaints about this film. It was entertaining, it was sharp, it was unique, it was fun, it was creative, and I think that Zoe is just going to be a force of nature for the next film that she writes and directs.
That I definitely agree with.
Yeah. Also, Channing Tatum, I mean, what a comeback, because I feel like he's just been established as this like hot leading man that's just like a bro. And I'm really glad that he is tapping into kind of a little bit of like darker roles. And I hope that he keeps going with that route. Blink Twice is a wild, wild story about what it talks about, like elitism, like abuse. It's just a wild film. And she did an incredible job with it. There's really nothing I would change. My next film is Civil War. Very different vibe. So I really enjoyed Civil War. This came out, when did this come out?
I think it was like April or May, yeah.
April. Alex Garland directed it. I just went into this film very blind, I think, and I came out surprised, because I was thinking that we were just going into a typical war film, which like they're good. War films are great, but can be very oversaturated and overdone. And I loved the lens that he did this through. Specifically, he focuses on war photographers and what their purpose and like role is within war, which is just a topic and a conversation that I haven't necessarily seen on film before. And it was just a very interesting insight. It also has a killer cast. Kirsten Dunst, Kaylee Spaney, Jesse Plemons. Kaylee Spaney, I think this came out right after Priscilla.
Yeah.
And so it was a great second film for people to see that she has this range of also playing a very like feet on the ground role and can like just be very realistic and raw. And then I think my last one that is not on either of your list is Night Bitch.
Haven't seen it.
It's now on Hulu. So
Gotta watch
go
it.
watch it. Amy Adams, this film is crazy. And I'm just warning you guys, for whoever hasn't seen it, it's not a perfect film, but for just the overall artistic spin that they're doing, it's pretty, I just really enjoyed the story. It's about a very new mother who is trying to figure out motherhood and womanhood while also resonating with like animalistic tendencies is what I'll say. And it's very unique. It's not something that I think a lot of people will maybe resonate with, but it's very entertaining. Amy Adams is wild in it. She goes all out, and I really like this for her career. I think it was probably a very fun film for her to make. And then it's also very touching at times and speaks on another level about womanhood and mothers. And it's kind of like a little bit of a like love letter to women everywhere. So those are my films.
Nice. Vinny, other ones that we didn't get to on your list.
Yeah. So First off, my number 3 went to Look Back, which one of my favorite writers of all time, Tatsuki Fujimoto. I am a nerd. He's the same writer who mangaka who did Chainsaw Man, Fire Punch, Goodbye Eri, Look Back. I read Look Back when it first was published in Shonen Jump a couple of years ago now. Loved it. Seeing the adaptation here was beautiful through and through. Like, what an amazing adaptation of a source material. It's short, like it's only 55 minutes. It adapted it, and it didn't like try to stretch it out. It didn't try to cut it down. It was just perfect. The music, the animation, and specifically why I put it so high is this is an important story for anyone who is an artist or anyone who wants to make art of any kind. It is a story about the purpose of art and the struggles of making art, and it's almost in a way Mark Jacobino and I talked about in our review, not a biography of Fujimoto himself, but very inspired by his life. Obviously, the 2 main characters, their names combined spell out his name, Fujimoto. So incredible. Number 6 for me too, another incredible animation, Memoir of a Snail. Saw it at Montclair Film Festival. Whole theater was crying by the end. Swear to God, had sniffles. Such a touching piece of animation. So beautiful. It's stop motion claymation, and it's beautiful. It's so touching, and it tells the story of a woman just throughout her whole life and the ups and downs. It's a lot darker, definitely not aimed for children, but anyone who's a fan of animation, highly check it out. Monkey Man. I love Dev Patel. Dev Patel, just give me more of Dev Patel. Love him so much. He basically did everything on this film, and it is a out of the water debut by him. Blown away. The technical, the action here is awesome. The mythology, as they're blending Hindu mythology into this revenge story, which admittedly I am very biased towards revenge stories, and I think that is the biggest. It's not a perfect film. It is not a perfect film, because the biggest issue with this film is that it does follow a very formulaic plot structure that you've seen in almost every revenge film, but the inspiration is there. You see it directly, but he takes a twist on it that is so crazy, and it's set in Mumbai, and the setting of Mumbai just it blends with this film in such a way that I just adore. Songs from a Hole, what an incredible documentary by Contessa Gales. Also Montclair, this is an indie film, and it was just an incredible documentary following the life of someone who was incarcerated at a young age and blending its style with music videos. And lastly, A Complete Unknown, one word, Timmy.
It was great. Well,
Love that.
We went through it. We did it. 2024 is behind us. Looking forward ahead to 2025. Let us know in the comments, what are your guys' favorite movies of the year? Did we cover some of the ones that you guys really loved? Are there some that we missed out on? Are there some that we mentioned in the beginning that we haven't discussed at all in this movie that you absolutely loved that we should check out? Definitely let us know. We love that you guys get to follow us along the whole entire year. Follow us for our reviews. A lot of the films that we have discussed, if not all of them, are on the channel for full-length reviews. So you want to hear our full, unsolicited takes on all these movies, whether it be Liz gushing over Wicked, whether it's me gushing over Anora, or Vinny's obvious passion for Look Back. All of those reviews in their full capacity on our YouTube channel. So definitely check that out if you guys can. Give this video a like and subscribe to us, guys. We are rapidly approaching our goal of 500 subscribers. Once we get there, it's onward and upward. We have a big 2025 for you guys. So please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell for alerts. We got new episodes dropping for you guys pretty much every day. And if you guys want to follow us on social media, all that stuff is below me in the video currently, and it's also in the YouTube description. Just signing off, I am Darian Scalamoni.
I am Liz Seiko.
I'm Vinny Albano.
And we will see you guys next time.
This is The Culture.